Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to talk about perhaps some of the most unannounced and unknown news when it comes to the Wuthering Waves space and some of the very beginner-friendly things that we're going to be seeing up in the game moving forward ever since we started version 2.4. And that is actually going to be the new Voyage system that's going to be in the game. And so some of you might have seen this post on Reddit over here, kind of like advertising one part of the system, which is going to be the new banners that will be available for every single account that starts the game after version 2.4. And I think that there's a couple of misconceptions about like this entire system. A lot of people think that this is like a free 5-star. A lot of people think that this is like a free weapon, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. And so what I wanted to go through today was actually break down all of the components of this new Solaris New Voyage celebration system, some of the best picks that players can probably be making across these banners, and some of the tips that they can have when it comes to either, perhaps re-rolling their account, starting a new one to ensure that they can actually take advantage of it, or if that sort of system isn't actually worth it at the end of the day for them. Because a lot of people have looked at this, they think it's a new 5-star, and they're like, oh, I started in like version 2.3, I only have like a Zani or a Chacona, should I just start over anew? And so we'll be answering all those questions today. Let's just go ahead and get ourselves started with what the actual patch notes look like, because I don't think a lot of people knew exactly what was going on over here. So this is what it looks like in the patch notes. We're going to go through this really fast because we actually have it opened up in game. So the idea is that you need to create a new character profile after the version 2.4 update and then reach Union level 5. It lasts for 30 days after you unlock those requirements. There are going to be a bunch of tasks along with it, as well as a new convene, some bundles, and all of that. So text is a little bit boring. Why don't we just go ahead and look at what it looks like in game. So you're going to have a variety of tasks that you have to do as a newer player, and once you reach about 24 of those tasks completed, you're going to be able to, you see unlock all the festivity points, maybe it's not 24 tasks, you'll be able to actually choose a standard 5-star character to go ahead and take home with you after getting all that grinding done. And so the idea here is that there are only 2 real picks on this banner, or honestly, if we're really thinking about it in the current state of the game, there's only one. If you don't choose Verena, if this is not the character that you're selecting, you're pretty much just griefing. I think I'm pretty solid when I say that. I think I'm pretty, I have no doubt, not a shadow of doubt in my mind when I say that. If it's not going to be Verena, then it's going to be Encore in terms of like meta strength. Choosing pretty much anybody else among these 3 selections is pretty much just like griefing your progress and griefing your account. Because Verena was at the launch of the game and still is one of the highest value picks that people have available. And she only gets better with her additional dupes, with her S2 perhaps being one of the strongest upgrades in the game with how much it does for her rotation time and overall strength. And so if you don't pick that, or you don't pick her, you don't pick it, you're going to be in some trouble. At least in my opinion, especially when it comes to clearing some of the endgame content. Now, here are some of the tasks that people have to do, and boy oh boy, did Kuro Games do quite a bit of work in designing this whole layout. You'll have things like, completing the main quest, completing 3 acts. You'll realize that you get all these acts done actually really fast, reach Union level 30, and these are all, gonna give you about 1 point each for 8 total in the category, and you'll see over here, okay, I've got to do quite a few of them to be able to get those full 24 points. And so you're just seeing over here things like consume 240 weight plates, complete the dodge or outro skill tutorial, so on and so forth, get some crests, clear a couple of floors in Whimpering Wastes, do a little bit of the Elusive Realm activity, and then actually start progressing your account. So the idea is that a player should be able to pretty easily get all of this stuff done within I would say a week or a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks of playtime, and then they'll be able to get this free standard 5-star and add it to their portfolio. However, one thing you do have to recognize is that even if you're a player that started before, it's likely due to the relatively, I would say, low scope of these rewards, they're not like crazy, right? They're not like absolutely mind-shattering. They're like purple mats. They're like 20 Astrite per claim. These aren't like the craziest rewards ever. And if you're somebody that started prior to version 2.4, you already got this standard 5-star selector in the mail just from launching the game. That was the sort of like launch compensation that we had back in version 1.0 that basically got extended until the end of version 2.3. And the end result of that is, I don't think you're relatively far behind if you're a player that actually started in version 2.2 or 2.3 and is kind of looking at all these missions right now. So that's not really necessarily a reason to just start a new profile, re-roll the account, blah, 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 all of that. Now, let's get into some of the reasons why some people are thinking about re-rolling. And that's going to be the new Voyage Conine. And boy, oh boy, I think that there needs to be quite a bit of clarification made about this one. So, on this banner, which is a starter banner, you're going to have it available for 30 days once you reach UL 5. And the idea here is that you'll be able to select across all of these different characters, basically one character that you're going to be able to expend about 160 pulls on, and the Conine event ends after the selected 5-star resonator is obtained. You might be wondering, oh, why does this show 160 pulls instead of like 80, which is like the pity for the banner? And that's because you can actually lose 50-50 on this banner. You are fully capable of losing the 50-50 on this one. And if that happens, well, you're going to have to go the other, 80 pulls or so on and so forth until you unlock the 5-star, and then this banner, this Conine, will actually end. And so the idea over here is that you'll select one of these characters that was released between version 1.0 and version 1.4, and there's kind of only one real answer, or really, there's two real answers when it comes to who you should select over here. It's one of these two. It's going to be Shorekeeper or it's going to be Camellia. And the reason for that is that this is currently probably the most flexible support in the game, one of the best units that we have available in the game. And this DPS over here is probably one of the most beginner-friendly ones in the game due to the fact that you can just combine Camellia over here, right, who is a sword user, with the rewards from UL 45 in-game, which is a copy of a standard 5-star weapon. And the idea is that Camellia, who you're able to get from this banner if you don't choose Shorekeeper, is actually able to really use Emerald of Genesis very well. And this is a powerful weapon that gives crit rate and a very general weapon effect. And so if you're not really choosing these, if you're not choosing among those two, you're kind of, again, just like griefing. The rest of these units are pretty okay. They're pretty good aside from, I would say, Yinlin at this point. But with these two being so valuable and so powerful for new players, there's not really that many other great options if we're really thinking about it in terms of who's going to be able to get up and running on your account really fast. Camellia because she's got the standard 5-star, and Shorekeeper because, well, she's a healer, she's a support, she's got amplifying outro skill that gives everybody a damage buff that's similar to Verita, and then she has one of the most powerful buffs in the game, which is a 12.5% crit rate boost, a 25% critical damage buff, which for newer players is going to make the building of your DPS characters a lot easier earlier on because you'll be able to much more easily, actually crit your enemies, and then when you do crit, you'll end up dealing more damage. That'll be that in terms of the overall starter banner. And this is the thing, right? It's not like you're getting extra pulls for being a beginner. It's not like you're getting this 5-star that you're seeing over here on the new Voyage Resonator Conine for free. You're still going to have to, and we'll just choose Shorekeeper for now, right? You'll still have to go ahead and use limited pulls on this banner. And so this is the situation, ladies and gentlemen. If you're somebody that started earlier on, you started back in version 2.2, 2.3, maybe even 2.1, and you don't have Shorekeeper, I don't really think it's worth re-rolling the account, losing all of that progress, losing all of that exploration, losing all of this stuff, just to be able to pull on this banner. It's kind of just like having a rerun fast forwarded onto your account. And when we consider, right, especially if you played during version 2.3, the only new characters on here are Camellia and Shorekeeper, who already ran in version 2.2. And so all of the units that we're seeing over here have re-ran at least once between versions 2.2 and version 2.3, and they just happen to be rerunning again for new players in version 2.4. for 30 days. And so this is my advice for everybody here. The only people that should be relatively impacted by this are those that started in version 2.3 and really want Shorekeeper because you had access to all the other banners, right? Or you really want Camellia because I guess she falls into the rerun at 2.2. Aside from that, it doesn't really, you should just wait for a rerun. Like, you should just wait for the actual rerun that's not related to the new beginner banners. Because this is really just targeted to people that are seeing the game on Steam, that are seeing the game after its advertisements for version 2.4 as a whole for like Cartithia and all of that, and are trying to start the game now. That's who it is designed for. And I would say at this point, if you already have an account, you're already like UL 40 plus, UL 30 plus, you've gotten all those rewards, all the time limited stuff that occurred in the last patch that you're not just going to be able to get again, it's not worth re-rolling. Now let's move on to the weapon banner. And this is where stuff gets a little bit spicy because players are going to have a lot of decisions for all the different weapons that they'll be able to choose across all the ones released from version 1.0 to 1.4. And I gotta say, unlike the character banner, there's really only there's maybe one or two good picks on here, maybe three. And that is going to be ranked up. We're going to have String Master, Blazing Brilliance, and Ages of Harvest. Those are probably the three most general use case weapons in the game across, a couple of different categories. The Rectifier, the Broad Blade, as well as the Sword. I would say String Master is a big cut above the rest because it's the most powerful general use rectifier in the game. And something that a lot of players can do, depending on how lucky they get on things like the Novice Convene, which only costs like 40 pulls, is if they go ahead and they get a Verena or they get an Encore somehow, and they also factor in all of these new rewards, then one thing that you can do to make your account relatively strong is, well, pull a String Master and then throw it on your Encore. And then while you're pulling the String Master, well, guess what, guys? You might be able to actually get a variation in the process because variation is on this beginner banner. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the best 4-star weapon in the game due to how incredibly powerful it is, its ER effect, and its concerto energy generating effect on characters like Verena or Shorekeeper, who, for a lot of newer players, are the highest value units in the game. And so I would even dare say it's unlucky to get a weapon early here. This would be my tip for every single new player. Do this, get this whole situation going, and then pray that you don't get the weapon early so you'll have as many opportunities as possible to roll for variation. Because in a lot of ways, variation can be a higher value pick than the actual 5-star weapon that you're going to be seeing over here. And the real goal is to actually get 2 copies of variation and then level both of them. You'll be able to do things in the game like actually syntonize weapons, use a copy to get this effect from rank 1 to rank 2. And then once you reach the max rank, right, it'll actually double the effect. The idea is don't even syntonize them. Just level up 2 separate copies. And then once you have 2 copies on your account that are, both level 40, 50, 60, 90, then start syntonizing each of them individually afterwards. And that'll ensure that, with your Shorekeeper, you're going to have a weapon that she can use that's going to be really strong. And then with your free Verena that you're getting from over here, she'll have a copy of variation that she can use as well. And so those will be my general tips for the banner, especially for newer players or anybody that's thinking about re-rolling. But I would just say overall, once again, the banners are nice. They're a great boon. They're a great gift to newer players. But at the end of the day, guys, it is really just not worth re-rolling your account, especially if you've already gotten all the previous time-limited rewards, because unless you're willing to spend some actual cash, use up your top-up bonuses and all of that, you're still going to require limited pulls to be able to actually access any of these banners. And that means limited pulls you're not going to be able to spend on units like Cartithia or weapons like Cartithia's weapon. The last thing that I need to talk about that I didn't note are the 4 stars on this banner. And boy, oh boy, they're actually really good. Mortefi is an incredibly strong sub DPS that when you get him to S6, he's got some fantastic upgrades as well as great personal damage. And then Sanhua is probably the best 4-star sub DPS buffer in the game, and you already get a copy of her for free just from playing it. And then her S6 also gives a nice little attack boost. But honestly, both of these banners have amazing 4 stars, and they have some incredible standout options in terms of what you can pick. And so, again, you can treat this as like a bit of a guide video on how to navigate this system. The last thing that we'll talk about over here is the bundles. And I guess thankfully, or not so thankfully, depending on where you stand on the predatory side of the equation, there's only 2 bundles available for new players. And they're both like high value, but there's not really a lot to actually get. You get one limited weapon pull, 1 limited character pull, 2 crystal solvents for $2. And then you get 5 standard or 5 character pulls, 400 astrite, and then 5 solvents for $10. And so you can definitely pick these up if you want, but it's not like, you know, getting these or not getting these is going to, you know, make or break the progress of your account. They're just nice things to have, in my personal opinion, that aren't too crazy. So yeah, I would just think about it that way. These, on the other hand, and this, on the other hand, yeah, that's gonna take you a little bit. That's gonna take you a little bit further, and you know, of course, costs a little bit more. That'll be the whole system. Hopefully we've cleared up some of the potential misinformation, some of the potential misunderstandings that players might have about this system, and quelled some of the concerns that people have had that this is going to, you know, like absolutely brick their account because they just didn't start during version 2.4. The system is nice, but you know what's nicer? Having started the game earlier on in the patch, or earlier on in the game's life cycle, and then having more access to all of those limited time events, all of those Tower of Adversity resets, all those Whimpering Waste resets, that at the end of the day are, you know, that's a lot of astrite that you'll be missing out on, and a lot of potential progress that you'll have to redo if you do decide to, you know, go again, just because you see these shiny banners. So as a final summary, highest value picks over here, get Shorekeeper, and then if you don't really want Shorekeeper, Camellia is going to be the next highest value pick. Definitely do not choose Changli or Yinlin if you're a newer player. You will kind of just probably uninstall the game if you do that. Do not pick these 2 characters if you're a newer player. Honestly, don't pick Changli, Yinlin, or Jeja if you're a newer player, if I'm going to be frankly honest. Jinxie, Jian, and Zhang Liao are okay, decent picks, but there are just better options. And then when it comes to the weapons, go String Master, or pick up the weapon of the other character that you decided to choose. You could always just do that, but again, this is for meta optimization. This is for the highest value you can possibly get, because I'm still using this weapon nowadays, and I'm still using Shorekeeper nowadays. And I pulled these characters when they released back in either version 1.0 or in version 1.3. Let me know what you all think. Peace!